What's going on, guys? My name is Arrow, and in today's video, we are playing Gladiator Cyclone. The core idea behind this build is that I wanted to play Cyclone without playing a Shockwave build. I also haven't played a Gladiator in years and wanted to make a Gladiator function. So we started with the core concept of Gladiator and Cyclone put together, and the result is something that I'm actually pretty proud of. Cyclone is a skill with incredibly low damage, and without some sort of supplemental damage, it's really not going to do much for you. However, with giant AoE scaling, bleed, explosions from Gladiator, and some impale scaling, the damage is serviceable enough, and the mapping experience is phenomenal. This build absolutely flies, and you are very tanky while you are channeling your Cyclone. If you stop, I can't promise anything. Defenses include infused channeling, some max res, armor and evasion, incredibly high life recovery, and most importantly, the ability to do damage while moving. The reason everybody loves Cyclone is you can spin and win. This build cost me somewhere in the realm of 15 to 20 divines. I did not keep perfect track of everything, so do not hold me to that, but it was not very expensive to put together. I would recommend this build to someone who just wants to play Cyclone or wants to play a Gladiator and is looking to do mostly mapping content. Now, I was able to kill Eater and Exarch, and you could probably easily kill all the pinnacle bosses that are not Ubers with this build. It's got enough damage. It's not going to blow anybody away, but if you want to map, this is a fantastic build for it. So let's jump into the gear, the items, the gems, etc., and talk about how we get this massive AoE and how we make this build work. I want to take a minute to thank everybody for the support. We reached 10,000 subs yesterday. That's a massive milestone. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you want to support me even more, check out the link in the description below for my Twitch, twitch.tv/AER0__. I'm live almost every single day. We have a ton of fun over there, so please check it out. Thank you all so much. All right, so we have level 94 Arrow Actually Glad, and that's because I'm actually playing a Gladiator, and also because I'm actually glad to be playing this build. It was a lot of fun. So we have the star of the show here at Series Disfavor. This is a really cool item. I have not used this since the rework. They added a bunch of damage to this item, so it's actually a competitive axe. For Cyclone, it gives you +1 meters to weapon range, and on Cyclone, that equals 80% area of effect. As you can see here on the gem, 8% increased AoE per 1/10 of a meter of additional melee strike range. So that does apply. I know there was some confusion about whether or not that actually works. It does in fact work with Cyclone. Also, its Series Disfavor has 30 quality to socketed support gems, which enables some really interesting things. One, which is anomalous cast on crit. This is a question I answered on stream probably 300 or 400 times. Why are you using cast on crit? So anomalous cast on crit gives you 20% more attack damage with its quality at 20%. When you socket that into the Series Disfavor with 30 additional quality, that goes up to 50% more attack damage. We're not using it to cast on crit. We're not even critting. We're just getting 50% more damage from this gem. It's an absurd interaction that only exists, I think, here in Diala's, but it's best in slot support for us. We also get some additional life regen from infused channeling. You can also go with the, I think it's anomalous infused channeling, which gives you more effective infusion, but I wanted better rage uptime for our gloves. So let's talk about the gloves. Calm Spirit, these things are phenomenal. It's probably the best item in the game right now, dollar for dollar. Chaos for chaos. Regenerate 1 rage per second for every 100 life recovery per second from regen. What that means is if you have 1,000 life regen, you regenerate 10 rage per second. And that makes it so when you click Berserk on your left click, your rage will regen as it degens from using Berserk. So Berserk uptime is super, super important. Berserk gives us more damage, 20% more attack speed, 30% more movement speed, and 19% less damage taken. And you saw how long that lasted and how quickly it's going to get back up. And by the time we can click Berserk again on our left click, we don't even have to do anything. It's already back up to full rage, and it means the only downtime we have is the cooldown, which is 5 seconds. Getting the helmet enchant 40% reduced rage loss is really important. But effectively, we get a ton of rage regen from various life regen sources on our gear. So on the helmet, on our boots, we have life regen rate, which is effectively a more multiplier on top of your regen. So you can get 29% here on the boots. You can get a little bit more with a better implicit. And we just grab as much regen as we can on our gear. I'm not going to talk about every single gear piece because a lot of this stuff is very straightforward. I'm not going to talk about every gem, but I'm going to try to hit the interesting interactions. So Death Rush, if you want to map, this is the best item that you can put on for a mapper. Adrenaline for 3 seconds on kill, provided you are killing consistently. This will have 95% uptime. The life on kill and chaos res is just a bonus. This is just about getting us free adrenaline while mapping. Adrenaline gives us 100% increased damage, 25% attack, cast, and movement speed, and also more physical damage reduction. We are looking to scale as much move speed as we can because Cyclone's downside is that it has a less movement speed multiplier. So adrenaline. Next we have increased effect of onslaught, and we get onslaught from this chest. We're getting +1 here. It was very cheap to get a +1 Duressos to give +1 levels to our Enlighten, and then of course to all of our auras as well, but mostly to get a level 4 Enlighten for the cost of a level 3, which is about 30 chaos right now. Anomalous Flesh and Stone is really nice because our AoE of our Cyclone in Blood Stance and Sand Stance are a little bit different, but switching over to Blood Stance while you boss gives you just a more damage multiplier. So we've got Blood and Sand. We can alternate between Blood Stance and Sand Stance for both of these skills. We get blind while mapping, and then we maim enemies while bossing. We get more area damage in Blood Stance and more AoE in Sand Stance. The All's Uprising gives us free pride. It just allows us to fit one more aura in. We have a bunch of auras in this build. Let's talk about the Ascendency. Why Gladiator? Gladiator gives us a couple of things. When combining Blood in the Eyes with our Series Disfavor, we have a 75% chance for an attack to cause a bleed. We hit enemies, I think, 7 times per second or something, which means every single enemy is going to be bleeding when we hit them. So we can then get the effects of Gratuitous Violence, which is bleeding enemies you kill explode. So this also gives us free blind, free maim, and increased damage taken on enemies. We use Arena Challenger for more movement speed and more attack speed. This is just another way to help Cyclone feel better. The faster you go, the faster you are going to clear your maps, and the better Cyclone feels to use. A slow Cyclone, in my opinion, is unplayable. So getting all of these sources of movement speed is very strong. And then Outmatch and Outlast, this is the best final one we could take. It was pretty much Pain Forged or this, and I'm not scaling block at all. So this gives us frenzy charges while mapping. We don't get the endurance charges from this, but 10% more fizz and 10% reduced physical damage taken. We have a bunch of sources of reduced physical damage taken. We have some fizz taken as here. We have endurance charges generated from the chest. We have reduced generic damage taken from Berserk. We have a healthy chunk of armor with no flaster or anything up. We have 17k. So while you're mapping, you actually feel very, very tanky. So on the tree, we have an Inspired Learning here because we were already taking these 4 points anyway, and Inspired Learning just feels really nice. It doesn't help the build that much because we are using Brutality, so a way to make this build a little bit better would be to swap out the Brutality for something else. You get more effect of the Inspired Learning, but that's kind of whatever, just to get more physical as extra modifiers. We grab for tattoos. We don't take very many tattoos outside of the melee strike range. The way these work is it's 8% increased AoE per, so we just take a bunch of these. We don't need all the strength that we have, and you could honestly keep going with this, but I hit a threshold that I felt really good about. I was pretty much like touching the edges of the screen with my Cyclone when I have my buffs up, so I didn't feel the need to do any more. But basically what you do is you go into PoE and you can add these in and see how many you need to get to the next threshold. Usually it's 2 to 3 per additional AoE, so you'll have to check that on your own. We're scaling AoE here. We've got one large cluster. We're getting Impale and Mana Leech here. We get Life Leech with Hematophagy, which also gives us access to the Mastery for 10% instant leech. It is absolutely one of the best things that you can get on a build that leeches. Instant leech is phenomenal. We use Impact for the Forbidden Flesh and Flame. That comes from Slayer. That gives us melee strike range, 50% increased area of effect while mapping, some accuracy that we don't use because we are taking Resolute Technique, and 15% more damage when you're close to enemies, which we always are when we're bossing. So grab a little bit of max res here. This armor and evasion mastery is really nice. You get immune to bleeding if the helmet has higher armor than evasion, which this one does. So we have Corrupted Blood on a Jewel and then bleed immune from this mastery here. So that means we are entirely bleed immune. I probably could drop this flask, but I never did. As long as we're hitting something, we're at max life. and we can't be bled, which for me on a build that needs to move is really, really nice to have. Our Watcher's Eye, this was actually super cheap. Impales last 2 additional hits. You want to get that, and then you want to get either regen vitality or life recovery with vitality. Both are very similar in power, both just giving you more rage regen, so your rage lasts longer. So that's pretty much it. I wanted to keep this pretty quick because I don't think what I'm doing here is super groundbreaking, but I did want to share it because I wanted to prove to everybody that you can play a fun Cyclone Gladiator. Thanks for watching to the end. If you like what I do, you can like this video, comment down below, or subscribe to the channel. Also, I have a Twitch, twitch.tv/AER0__. If you don't already follow that channel, go ahead and click that link in the description. I'm live almost every single day. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care.